Yeah, we've got one to move around.
Thank you for your patience, Mr. Chair.
No problem.
Commissioner Helfrey. Commissioner Rubis. Commissioner Cohn.
Here.
Commissioner Broyles. Commissioner Clayton. Commissioner Depler.
Here.
Commissioner Jackson.
Here.
Chair Beatty.
Here.
Councilmember Brost.
Here.
And Mayor Boland.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get an approval of the minutes from December 4th, please?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Jackson, second by Commissioner Rubis. Any comments? All those in favor say aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstain?
Dane.
Motion's passed with one abstention. All right, does the Department of Planning have any opening comments?
Just a couple of remarks. First, as you can see, we have a number of our commission members on Zoom tonight, but we do have a quorum, so we can proceed. And then, Mr. Chair, when we do call for a vote, I give them just an extra second or two because with Zoom, there's a bit of a delay.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So at this time, we'll go into public comment session. As a reminder, 3 minutes for anyone commenting. And Mr. Newberry. Oh, and these are, if you want to speak on one of the 2 public hearings, now is not the time. But for everything else, this is the time to speak. Go ahead, Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first speaker card is Mr. Nowicki, followed by Mr. Frank.
Members of the commission, my name is Frank Nowicki. By training, I'm a metallurgist, and by dint of practice, I'm a stream preservationist. The wife's family has owned property in the Black River watershed for a long time and has cooperated with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to monitor stream health on one of the creeks that is below 2 tailings ponds from Amax and Kamenko. For a very long time, the streams were clean, but last year, for the first time, we have barium in the stream at 600 parts per million. There are no barite deposits in the watershed to account for this. It can only come from one place, and that's the 2 tailings ponds. The tailings ponds, the mine operations are all paved solid. Their runoff is controlled, it goes to a filtering plant, and everything doesn't get out. The EPA, Department of Natural Resources, and the Mine Safety Administration watch the plants. The tale of woe that precipitates this is leaching. In Solace's agricultural proposal, they have no accommodation to contain the runoff that will happen. The previous 4 years, we've been up 10 inches on rain each year. We're in fractured limestone. Everybody with a well is in trouble. There is no way to seal off all those wells from the runoff. They have to have a water impermeable membrane and a treatment plant to cover this up. Because if it can happen down in the country where you've got the 3 big guns breathing down their necks and they're there every 6 months, with all due respect to the city of Wildwood, you're not going to be able to do that. And I had noticed that none of these people are going to live downstream from their facility. So their risk involved and they're having their neck out on the line is nil.
1 minute.
All right, that's good.
All right. Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker card is for Mr. Frank, followed by Ms. Hinson.
Hello, friends. My name is Gary Frank. I'm in the Questover Canyon neighborhood, which is directly next to that. Research and development is important, but you just don't do this in a neighborhood. You do this on a giant industrial zoned campus with runoff systems, water treatment, and testing. We may not be non-urban, but we are still residential. Our land should never resemble a scientific campus. That's why there's always going to be some risk associated with, research and development. And that's why I'm standing with my neighbors and asking you to vote no on PZ 18-23. The Solus petition for FAR Greenhouse highlights the problem of allowing an ordinance change to permit research and development greenhouses. Solus is a small company with somewhat modest investments, understandable, but they're not Monsanto and Bayer. You would think that's a good thing, but in this case, it may not be. Because if Solus or any small research and development greenhouse experienced flooding, as was just mentioned, or had a careless employee who allowed soil contamination, it's tougher for small companies because they don't have the funding or the backing to fix the problem. They just simply can't afford it. Monsanto and Bayer is large enough to buy out homeowners, put in purification systems when operations went wrong. Solus just cannot do this. Bayer settled billions in Monsanto lawsuits after the acquisition, and Solus doesn't have the money for that on those type of lawsuits. As for PZ 25-23, vote no on that as well. Solus is trying to do industrial level work in our backyard. FAR is not the right facility. St. Albans Road is not the place for it. Wildwood does also not have the time or money to deal with the problems that may come up. The published emails between the planning office and Solus show that this company is too immature to handle business properly. They didn't know the land that was bought wasn't zoned for them. They also didn't know the city had lighting regulations. They also didn't know about the grandfathered in rules of the property. What else do they not know? Only time will tell. Hopefully not is the case this time. Let's not allow a company whose current business strategy is ask for forgiveness later. For that reason, we'd ask you to vote no on PZ 25-23. And while we're at it, let's make sure we don't go over this again by voting no on the ordinance change of PZ 18-23. Research and development is not meant for the non-urban residential setting. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello again, Tracy Hinson. My address is on the card. I'm in the Questover Canyon neighborhood. Solus has not been open. My husband and I are not hard to find. They could have emailed us at any time and we would have been happy to meet them. They have also not been honest. In November, the COO stood right here and said the company had no intentions of expanding the current footprint of the greenhouse. But my husband talked to a contractor who was giving Solus a quote on clear cutting and concrete pouring. That doesn't sound like no intentions of expansion. At the same time, the COO stood right here and said they had no intentions of growing cannabis, but their hiring practices say otherwise. They list Jeffrey Haynes as their research and development greenhouse manager. Mr. Haynes' own LinkedIn page boasts a quote, strong background and experience in growing cannabis. Why would they hire a research and development greenhouse manager who has dedicated a chunk of their career to cannabis, but then have no intention of growing it in their research and development greenhouse? How can we trust them? How can we trust a company whose leadership has a combined 62 years of experience with Monsanto Bayer? When has Monsanto ever been a truthful member of any community? Chemical disaster and Monsanto are synonymous. Dioxin, Agent Orange, PCBs, Alacor, Roundup, Dicamba, Pencap M. They've been caught multiple times unlawfully storing and transporting hazardous waste, but they didn't care who they hurt because the company was making money. And Monsanto is the company that Solus was born from. Solus's top people spent a collective 62 years there. I am terrified. My home is my dream. My parents, a nurse and a sheet metal contractor, helped me buy it. What if our wells are poisoned? Who pays for us to get hooked up to city water? Is that even an option for us where we live? What if Solus lights this place up and our peaceful Wildwood becomes a nightmare of whirring equipment and lights as bright as downtown St. Louis? Or worse, what happens if our soil is contaminated? Will I have to move? Who pays for that? I don't want to live anywhere else. I'm sure you all don't either. If the worst happens, what health impacts will we face? Don't open Wildwood land up to big business. Please vote no on PZ 18-23. Keep research and development agriculture industrial. It is not safe for neighborhoods. Please vote no on PZ 25-23. Solus has millions in investments. They can find a more suitable property that does not drain into Wild Horse Creek, that is not surrounded by our homes, and is actually in the proper zoning. Last meeting, Joe said, quote, "The primary charge of this commission is to protect the people." Please do that.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker card is from Mr. Larry McGowan, followed by Ms. Link.
Good evening, commission members. Thanks for allowing me to speak. Let me start by providing a little perspective as to why I am interested in how the former Far Greenhouse and nursery property will be allowed to be used. I'm a 30-year resident of Wildwood and was involved in the founding of the city. For 8 years, I served on the city council representing Ward 1. For slightly over 2 years, I served as city treasurer until that service was unfortunately cut short by health concerns. From 2019 through the current time, I've owned and operated a small family-run lawn care and landscape company here in Wildwood. Services we provided included fertilization and weed control, utilizing regulated products and chemicals for which I was a licensed applicator. The Missouri Department of Agriculture requires that individuals and businesses which apply a regulated pesticide be licensed in order to do so. In addition to providing the licensing requirement, we also had to fulfill an insurance requirement in order to protect the customers that we serve on which we have applied various types of pesticides. I suspect you're wondering why I've gone through this background information. In July 2023, I was diagnosed with stage 3 mantle cell lymphoma, an incurable type of blood cancer often associated with the use of Roundup and other pesticide products. While I hope the last 6 months of chemotherapy and immunotherapy treatments allow my oncologist to tell me that my cancer is in complete remission, it is almost certain it will recur and I will relapse sometime over the next 2 to 3 years, from what I understand. I want to ask that you listen carefully to the comments expressed by the residents of Wildwood, some of whom have commented about their concerns over environmental damage and potential effects on human and animal health based on the utilization of the Far Nursery property. I would ask that until thorough investigation of how the proposed use may affect the property, environment, and health, a conditional use permit not be granted to Solus to operate a research and development site. Please take into consideration particularly the health concerns expressed by our residents. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker card is from Ms. Link, followed by Ms. Witzig.
I'm Len Link, and I live on Indian Ridge. A new zoning category is requested to allow for agricultural research and activities. Perhaps zoning doesn't already exist because Wildwood is entrusted with over 7,400 acres of parks and mostly wooded public lands. We are the municipality with the most at risk from unintended contamination by non-FDA approved seeds and plants that are genetically engineered to be superior, presenting a risk to native species. This risk increases as Solus property sits in floodplain downstream from Wild Horse Creek and the Missouri River, where Amwater gets 80% of their surface water. Its location off Highway T presents further risk, as in the 6+ miles west of 109, the majority of accidents, including fatal, already happen at the intersection of T and 100. Imagine adding cars of all the employees, delivery trucks, and 18-wheelers hauling FDA not non-FDA approved genetically modified seeds to that equation. Solus even requests modification of existing signage code on public land and easements. This is evidence of the increased traffic that can be expected. As a trustee of the Wildwood Historical Society, I would like to remind the commission that we were not allowed a modification to place a sign on our own property off 100. The commission previously asked Solus to host a public event to allow residents to get to know them. As this never happened, a nearby resident researched and posted on Nextdoor that those who own and will run Solus have a decades-long history of working in top positions at Monsanto and BASF. Monsanto paid Oregon farmers $2.4 million in 2014 when they found volunteer, non-FDA approved genetically engineered glyphosate-resistant wheat, which Monsanto stated had been planted in other test fields more than a decade prior, with seeds being burned, buried, or shipped or sent back to Monsanto when the project was abandoned. In 2020, a Missouri peach farmer won a $265 million verdict against Monsanto and BASF when he lost 30,000 trees as a result of dicamba being sprayed on a neighboring farm. Internal corporate communications showed that not only did both companies know about the increased risk of the unattended damage, they planned on how they would avoid liability. As Solus is a new company, it may not have the egregious history of Monsanto and BASF, but it does have at least 5 of the people who held high-level positions at those companies during that history who will now be making decisions at Solus. As Solus is a new company, it doesn't have the billions of dollars to pay out in settlements when they continue to make the same bad decisions. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Ms. Witzig, followed by Mr. Snider.
Hi, my name is Victoria Witzig, and we're the owners at 2700 St. Albans East Drive, as well as 2730 Far Lane. I'm here to speak about PZ 25-23 and PZ 18-23. We're the neighboring lot next to the old mum field, a property that is downstream from Far greenhouses. We currently have 2 horses that live on the property, and we also own the lot that is directly behind the greenhouses. The Belrose family, back when they owned Far Greenhouse, was neighborly. They were invited to our wedding 2 years ago. My husband grew up riding dirt bikes with their son. They were a small business that only operated with minimal working hours. They were closed on Sundays for church and for family time. They were what you'd imagine when you thought about a locally owned small business. Now that Solus has taken over, that is no longer the neighborhood family business that everyone loved. This is a corporate operation trying to take up residents with us. The mayor requested they meet with us neighbors to go over their intentions, to go over their plans, to hear our concerns. Unless our invite got lost in the mail, that meeting did not happen. In the email chain posted between Mr. Snider and Joe, he stated, quote, they are more than happy to meet with any residents with outstanding questions and address their concerns face to face. If they were present or if they were paying attention at all here, everyone here wanted a meeting. That did not happen. Their only agenda is to appease you folks up here and online. They don't care about us. This isn't the type of business and attitude the city of Wildwood wants to allow in. At this time, they don't have plans to grow marijuana at this time. But is that only because federal regulations don't currently allow for it? And that's what we all want to hear. What happens in a few years when the regulations change and the laws are less strict? Will we all be back here again having the same fight? We can prevent that. On August 26, 2019, we had a surprise flood that rose as quickly as it went back down. Our pasture, again, the one that is right next door to Solus, flooded. There were flowers, flower pots, soils, and random debris from the nursery. No, we weren't mad about the flooding. The mess was cleaned up. What scares me now is what happens after the next flood. We won't be able to see the chemicals left behind like we did with the trash. The greenhouse where Solus plans to do the majority of their research and development is on the same floodplain as our pasture. When their greenhouse is underwater, so is our pasture. Who's going to come out and test our ground to ensure the chemical runoff isn't affecting it? Who's going to come out and protect our water sources? With what money too? We want to build on our property. We have our 3-month-old daughter here tonight, and we want her to be able to grow up here in Wildwood, play on the creek, explore the woods, ride her horses. We want her to be able to do all of this safely without the fear of exposing her to unknown chemicals. Don't let Wildwood become the next news headline about a local group of residents who all have strange cancers and diseases because we allowed an unknown company to come into our city to do their testing because the location was convenient for them. Please listen to the people here tonight. Protect us and our homes. Don't allow this to pass. Stop it now and don't allow this to come back for another vote ever again. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Mr. Snider, followed by Mr. Belrose.
Hi, my name is Dustin Snider. I'm the CFO of Solus Agrosciences. In the interest of time, we just want to dive directly into addressing some of the concerns that were brought up in previous meetings, because we think a lot of our points are actually serve to alleviate those concerns. The first one is, what exactly is our research and development? The work that we perform at the site is largely the same as would be done at any plant nursery. The activities include growing plants to produce additional seed for future generations, to improving agriculture and horticultural crops by crossing parental varieties as plant breeders have done for a millennia. And 3, observing the effects of different environmental conditions such as light, carbon dioxide, water, soil nutrients on the production of those plants. The second concern, cannabis. Let me be very clear. We are not currently growing cannabis at the site, nor at any point in the future will we grow cannabis at the site, period. Third, traffic. To date, traffic would have included customers visiting the garden center, which could have been up to 100 customers entering and leaving the site in the peak of the spring season. It would have included shipments of wholesale plants going out on box trucks, and up to 23 employees entering and leaving the site. Right now, we have 3 employees on the site. The garden center is closed. The traffic is dramatically reduced on that site, and it will continue to be into the future. The next, noise and activity on the site. The site has operated with a tractor, a couple of work trucks, a delivery van, and a number of box trucks. All of that activity is largely gone, given the closure of the actual horticulture operations at the site. The activity on the site itself will be dramatically reduced and already has to date. The hours of operation. Our website mentions round-the-clock plant care because we have automated systems that collect data on the growth status of our plants, even when our employees are not there. Our employees largely work regular hours, 8 to 5. Chemicals and runoff. We take great pride in the sustainability of our processes. All our plants are grown in greenhouses, which dramatically reduces the pest and weed pressure on our site. Occasionally, fertilizers, fungicides, insecticides are applied, but those are on a plant-by-plant basis and very sparingly used. Herbicides are almost completely excluded from use on our site. Any fertilizer or pesticide runoff would be orders of magnitude below what would occur in traditional agriculture or even on the lawn of a person that uses a normal routine of applying chemicals to their lawn. And finally, lighting. We're subject to the same lighting regulations put forth by the city of Wildwood, and that has no impact based upon the conditional use. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Mr. Belrose, followed by Mr. Null.
Thank you. My name is Pat Belrose and I live at 2704 Far Lane. I am the house adjacent to the current Solus Agroscience. My kids, my grandkids, and me have lived and played in the creek, and we do have a well. I wish to address the comments that are being posted to social media about Solus Agroscience. In the last 2 weeks, there's been a blitz of posts that are just simply not true. Like so many things on the internet, these statements are not based on fact. As I mentioned in the first hearing in September, I'm very excited about the work that Solus Agroscience will be doing at the Wildwood location. Their focus is to make agriculture more sustainable, not less sustainable. When I asked Solus why they bought Far Greenhouse, one of the reasons was my use of sustainable practices in growing plants. I followed the practice of what we call integrated pest management. I use other management tools besides chemicals to control pests, insects, diseases, and weeds. I use beneficial insects to reduce our use of chemicals and insecticide. I use microscreenings over the openings of the greenhouse to keep harmful and beneficial insects from coming into the greenhouse. I use my low-tech environmental controls to stop diseases.
Solus has taken my low-tech concepts and added to them with very high-tech precision instruments for better control of all pests with less chemicals. These and more items show that in the past, Far Greenhouse and now Solus AgroScience uses way less chemicals in growing of their plants than traditional horticulture and agriculture producers. Solus is using more technology, not more chemicals. They are not a chemical testing operation. A couple comments have been made about the flood. In 2019, we got 7 inches of rain
1
in
minute.
2 hours. The area of outside growing that is in the floodplain adjacent to the creek did flood. We lost about 4,000 pots of mums. The plants and unfortunately the plastic pots went down Wild Horse Creek. 3 different Saturdays, we had tons of volunteers, friends come by and pick up those plants. There's no longer plants being grown in there. None of the greenhouses are at that same elevation. All greenhouses have been built on filled soil that keep them out of the floodplain. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker card is the next speaker is Mr. Null, followed by Mr. Phelps.
Hello, my name is Dave Knoll. I live in the property adjacent to the current Solus facility. I've been there for 32 years. I've known Pat Belrose just as long. In the November meeting, there was a request to have a meeting with Solus and us, the residents of Questover Canyon, and that maybe never happened. So a lot of the turning that we see here is a result of a lack of information. We don't know what they're going to do. We can only imagine. So we continue to look for information and assurance as to how they plan to conduct the business. At that point in the meeting in November, Mayor Bowen made a note of 5 items he wanted information on, and tonight was the first time I had seen any information on any of those items. Marijuana was one, water contamination, lighting, traffic, and noise. So we request that there be more forthcoming with what their plans are and try to interact more with the local community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Mr. Phelps, followed by Ms. Vedvig.
Hello, my name is Alan Phelps. I live at 19375 Austin Fort Court. I'm simply against PZ 1823. I'm against the city's code changing to allow research and development agriculture in the non-urban residence district, as well as PZ 2523. I'm against the Far Greenhouse site being used for research and development agriculture. I know we've heard a lot of comments about the worries and concerns that people have on cancers and different things like that. And just look at history and some of the other meetings like this where people have been told this and then 20 years down the line, they find out that the residents do have cancer. Please take that into consideration when you make your decision tonight. And please vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Ms. Vedvig, followed by Ms. Dieters.
Jean Vedvig, 16709 Clayton Road. Regarding the new and conditional use permit for agricultural purpose, all the comments that have been made here tonight are very noteworthy. But we have to also add into that the significance of a good zoning plan. There's a reason that this area was zoned non-urban. And residents and property owners deserve the support of local officials to apply zoning regulations with consistency. They deserve to know what to expect. And they knew that FAR was there since 1950. But there was no anticipation of a new development for research and development. The information they have may be limited, but we don't know the impact. And that's why there are different zoning regulations, and you put something like this in an industrial zoned area. So can you say with confidence, from a very high level description, that you understand the real details of bioengineering, the real impact to the land, to the aquifer? If there's a problem, how will you clean it up? Currently, we're dealing with that in another area, as are many other communities in St. Louis and in the country. Why would you take the risk? What would you do if Soilus abandons the research and development? What if they go out of business or they claim bankruptcy? Soilus is not grandfathered in. FAR opened in 1950, prior to the 95 incorporation. They're not entitled to a non-conforming land use designation. You are the only one that can give them that. I would implore you to not do that and to continue to protect the zoning that the residents and the property owners expect when they buy property here and they make plans for their families and their futures. Ask yourself, every one of you that's on the board up here and here, where will you be in 4 years? These people intend to be here 10, 20, or more years. They've expressed that to you. They are not to be the enforcers of poor regulations. So you have a good master plan. Stick with it and stick with the zoning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, next speaker is Ms. Dieters, followed by Mr. Dieters.
Good evening. My name is Lori Dieters, and I reside at 2737 Questover Canyon in Wildwood. I'm here today to address PZ 1823 and 2523 involving Solis. They've requested a conditional use permit in the non-urban residence district to facilitate the use of the former FAR nursery. The proposed use is for research and development of agricultural products not intended for retail sale. The analysis for this proposal assumes that the underlying regulations of the non-urban residence district will be updated to include this type of activity, research and development. However, it's crucial to emphasize that we're not discussing a community greenhouse selling mums, flowers, or poinsettias. We're talking about research and development in a non-urban residence district. Wildwood is renowned for its pristine land, beautiful surroundings. This is precisely why people choose to live here, to enjoy the tranquility and natural beauty, not to be within miles of an R&D facility. I want to draw a parallel to my hometown of Jerseyville, Illinois, located 43 miles from here. Jerseyville has a population of around 8,300 and is a farm community. Several years ago, Monsanto, now Bayer, built a greenhouse facility about 4 miles outside of town. Whenever I visit my family there, I'm struck by the excessive light emitted by this facility. It's nestled between 2 highways and can be seen from miles away, and it honestly looks like the aliens have landed. I have pictures from family and friends showing how laughable it appears. People can see it 10+ miles away. Family who lives 4 miles from the facility with 7 acres of woods in between can still see the light in their backyard. Others report how obtrusive it looks, whether driving in or out of town, or simply trying to enjoy being outside with family and friends. One family member who lives about a mile away expressed his frustration at the facility's presence, jokingly saying they were admiring the glow the other night, insert sarcasm. Furthermore, when this facility was constructed, people in the area experienced problems with power surges. As someone who works from home, I cannot afford to deal with the humming, power surges, and other disruptions that may arise. I implore you, please do not allow this non-urban residence area of Wildwood to resemble my hometown of Jerseyville. This facility is just 0.6 miles from my front door, and for some of my neighbors, it's even closer, right in their front or backyards. Even though they say the lights will only be on between the hours of 5 to 7, which one statement says 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. and another says just 5 to 7 p.m., I still cannot fathom having this bright light along with research and development right in our backyard, especially with animals, children, and human life to consider. I earnestly request that you do not approve the placement of this R&D facility and vote no for the PZ 1823 and 2523. Let's preserve the natural beauty and peacefulness of our non-urban residence district in Wildwood. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Mr. Dieters, followed by Ms. Slaughter.
Hi, I'm Ron Dieters. I live at 2737 Questover Canyon. That was my wife. First, I'd like to draw your attention to the document that was online. It outlines certain requirements for compliance. There are 4 requirements listed and 2 of them are compliant. However, one of the requirements states that the enclosure of farm nursery business is intended to result in a very limited amount of activity at the site. My question is simple. According to the St. Louis Business Journal, Solus wants to be, quote, Amazon of agriculture to the world. This appears to be a significant conflict between their current intentions and what they proclaimed in the article. Secondly, we have a site design consideration. They state that no plans have been determined what structures will be upgraded, removed, or otherwise used or unchanged. This seems to be a TBD situation. Why must we continually attend meetings as we have since September without receiving essential information? They claim they want full transparency, but the absence of answers to this crucial question raises concerns. Regarding the operating 24/7, 365 days a year, they assert that this will only be staffed present around an 8-hour period. How will they manage the facility during non-working hours? What measures will be in place to ensure the smooth operations given the limited staff presence? The document mentions that security measures may include others. Quote, what does others entail? Does this involve additional lighting? This ambiguity leaves room for interpretation, and it may result in the entire facility being overlit to prevent theft or vandalism. The document also refers to the unknown nature of the research. While they claim to be growing plants, it is mentioned as unknown nature of research. This ambiguity adds to our apprehension. The assertion that the proposed development and uses can be visually compatible with the permitted use in the surrounding areas raises doubts. The property has been used in a certain manner for decades, and this new company introduces uncertainties about how they will utilize the area. Regarding the lighting, again, their statement about minimal impact due to specific hours contradicts. And as my wife said, one says 5 to 7 p.m., then the next says 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. Which is it? It is so inconsistent. It leads to ambiguities. In conclusion, these concerns I've raised today are not only mine, but shared by many in our community. We request transparency, clarity, and a resolution to these issues to ensure that any developments in our town align with the best interests and values of our residents.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Ms. Slaughter, followed by Mr. Sparks.
Hello, my name is Ashley Slaughter. I live in Ward 1, 19072 Bear Trail Road, just off of St. Albans Road. I considered pulling my speaker card because kind of felt redundant. It feels pretty obvious what everyone who doesn't have a vested financial interest wants. But then I realized I have an interesting perspective. I'm very fortunate to sit on 2 Wildwood commissions, and I know the charge that you have to do the best that you can with the information that you have in front of you to protect the city, to plan for tomorrow today. I read the information report, as I'm sure you did, and you see that the compliance isn't met. So there's 2 really incredible pieces of legislature before you, and you have the opportunity to plan for tomorrow today, to prevent terrible things happening. I planned on quoting a study about contamination that the University of Montana produced in 2021. But you've heard science. We have a scientist among us. There are people here saying, please don't do this. Protect the rural experience that we have. We've all heard the delightful coos of a baby in this room. Plan for her tomorrow today. Please do not ask her parents to be nervous when they send their daughter out to play on land that their family has owned for generations, because a company that, to the CFO's previous statement, mostly doesn't do these things. There were a lot of words that, if you listen, weren't certain. We typically don't. Most of are. There wasn't definites. Let's live in a definite. There's a definite way to protect our community, and that's to vote no. And then that's to vote no again and say, hey, we're done. We're not going to change the zoning. Let's plan for tomorrow, today. Let's be the Wildwood that you as commissioners say we want to be. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, Council. My name is Justin Sparks. I am the state representative for District 110, which encompasses the city of Wildwood. And I drove up here from the Capitol tonight. I live on Austin Fort Road, and I drove here for them because I represent them and I represent you. And anecdotally, I grew up as a little boy in Granite City, Illinois, with the smokestacks from the steel mill. My dad died of cancer after having it twice, both uncles, multiple family members, cancer. Now, I'm not saying Solus is doing that. What I'm saying is, listen to your people. That's their concerns. That's why they're here tonight. When I moved out here 14 years ago, it was for that reason. A clean, wonderful rural environment to raise my 6 kids. You serve them. I serve them. So I'm asking you to simply listen to them and understand their concerns, because they're valid. It's why I'm here. It's why you're here. And I believe that you all want to do the right thing for the city of Wildwood and for your constituents, because they are what matter. So I urge you, listen to them. That's it.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Mr. Stevens, followed by Ms. Brackle.
Hi, I'm Niall Stevens, Ward 8. First, I would just have to say, I think it's really embarrassing that we have residents here and it's standing room only, but half of the city staff and commission is online and not even here to. These people are here because they're scared that a company could literally kill them and their kids. And you guys don't even have the decency to show up here and to meet them in person. And I would just really encourage the commission to, when you have these meetings, come here in person and meet with the people. I would also encourage you to vote no on the agriculture research facility for all the reasons that have been listed. But I'm actually here to speak about the $50 building permit fee that got snuck in there at the bottom of the agenda. So while everyone's here to try to save themselves from chemical poisoning, this building permit fee, it is a tax increase. And so I'm asking you tonight, please don't increase taxes on us. If you look at the budget, the fees have already went up on licenses and permits from $96,000 just a few years ago to this year's budget's over $130,000. And now we're looking for like an additional almost 40% increase in those fees for these building permits. And the reason that's listed on the documents is that the city just wants the money, and that the city has created a need for the money because of erosion control and this and that, and hiring going from 19 employees to 27 employees. So we have all these needs. So the city is creating needs for money and then just going to tax us on the back end to get it back. And I'm just asking you to stop that practice. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Ms. Brackle, followed by Ms. Stackle.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Teresa Breel. I'm at 16227 Berry Hollow Court. I'm against PZ 18-23 as well as PZ 25-23. Please listen to what your residents have shared. Please do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Next speaker, Mr. Chair, is Ms. Stackle, followed by Mr. Sapp.
Good evening. My name is Christy Stackle and I reside at 2748 Questover Canyon Drive. Intention. That's a word Solus has used over and over again. No intention of doing this, no intention of doing that. Well, a lot of us have no intention of doing something and then doing it anyways. They may have no intentions of lighting up the sky and using loud equipment, but when the budget shows that they need to do it, they probably will. Vote no on PZ 25-23, protect your neighbors and protect Wildwood. Now to PZ 18-23, changing the ordinance would allow companies to come in and try to push the envelope on what can and can't be done in non-urban residential areas. Those areas were never intended for research and development. Those areas never were intended for big business. Vote no on PZ 18-23. Keep big business development out of non-urban residential areas. Protect your neighbors who live there and stick with the current master plan for Wildwood. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Mr. Sapp, followed by Mr. Salvatore.
Hi, I'm John Sapp, and I'm the treasurer of Woodstone Estates, which is directly across from Far Nursery. And I just want to say that I would appreciate if you would vote against PZ 18-23 and PZ 25-23. We moved out there 30 years ago, and I think I can safely say nobody moved out there to be close to a research facility. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
The next speaker, Mr. Chair, is Mr. Salvatore, followed by Felicity McGaan.
Hi, my name is Tony Salvatore, candidate for mayor of Wildwood. I'm here to discuss the request by Solace Agriculture, also known as Solace Real Estate, for a new conditional use category for the purpose of permitting a genetic engineering facility in a non-urban residential area. The city and also Mr. Representative from Solace here has inaccurately described the use of the former nursery as a good example to introduce a new conditional use type for this area. There is no comparing Far Nursery to a genetic chemical engineering facility the Solace Agriculture will be running in a residential area. Let me go back a little bit. Wildwood had one of the top 10 hazardous waste site in the city proper. It still does. It's called the Bliss property. It was responsible for Times Beach, responsible for many other areas that were contaminated. They had a little problem. They have the dioxin on the property. Dioxin, also known as Agent Orange, was told to millions of our soldiers and millions of our people that it was safe. We know otherwise. I fear that this is like Monsanto running their agricultural chemical engineering in our residential backyards. Also, the extremely high density lighting required to run such an operation 24 hours a day is very intrusive to the residents' quality of life. This request for conditional use permit should be denied. Monsanto also produced dioxin, and we were told it was safe. You could even drink it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Felicity McGaan, followed by Clayton McGaan.
Hello, very nervous. Sorry, first time with this. My name is Felicity and I am a lifelong resident of Wildwood. I was here when it was formed and I remember what a big deal it was when the residents rose up, banded together and formed this amazing community
to protect our beautiful countryside. I was here when the Russell Bliss Monsanto situation went down. I have seen enough people with cancer and connection to that to last several lifetimes. Wildwood is the emerald gem of St. Louis County. It is up to the governing body and residents of this residential treasure to keep this gem protected. People choose to settle here for the connection to nature, to see the stars at night, raise their families, and escape the light and sound pollution of the city. This type of operation should not be placed in the beautiful and highly sought-after location of Wildwood. It is a much better fit for a blighted section of downtown that is already lit up at all night long and needing these type of resources and infrastructure to add to it. Please vote no on PZ 18-23 and PZ 25-23 and choose to keep Wildwood wild and woodsy as it was intended to be. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Clayton McGaan, followed by Ms. Krauss.
Okay, I've just been tagged in. I have very similar views.
Name and address,
I'm
please.
sorry, my name is Clayton McGowan, 17251 Windsor Crest Boulevard. That's my bride.
Thank you.
Also want to share a couple of different things I'm an outsider. Okay, so everybody here is talking about how many years their generations have been in Wildwood and whatnot. I've only lived here for 15 years, but I come from a background that is in beautiful areas. I'm a PGA golf professional. I run golf courses. So I'm lucky to have that part of nature within me through the golf industry. I've lived in Hawaii, California, Colorado, all beautiful areas. They say, why did you move away from there? This is beautiful. I'm thrilled to live where I live. To have any other businesses come in. Remember years ago, we talked about a Target, and we've had all these different opportunities to try to raise tax revenue. We've turned down multiple businesses to keep Wildwood wild. Why would we open ourselves up to anything that is even remotely gives the opportunity to bring something nasty in? So let's just ignore all these ideas, or at least let them come back to us with maybe some more definitive answers to some of the questions that these people have posed. So once we get all that information, maybe then we can make a better decision. But as of right now, there seem to be way too many uncertainties, and those uncertainties are just dangerous, in my opinion. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the final speaker card for public comment session the department's received is from Ms. Krauss. Before inviting Ms. Krauss up here, I would just ask for your permission to say if any on Zoom would like to speak during the public comment session, use the raise hands feature and we will promote you to speak. Thank you.
Hi,
Hi.
Kathy Krauss, 16338 Center Point Drive, in Wildwood, obviously. I just recently have learned about this soulless project. So this is why I'm here tonight. I really didn't intend to speak and I don't have a lot to say. But a couple of things have come to mind when I heard Mr. Salvatore mention Agent Orange. This is a condition that my former husband developed after being in Vietnam, has suffered terribly from that. The Bliss property, of course, is something that has caused so many diseases, so much cancer, very near to us in Wildwood. There have been obviously countless numbers of properties contaminated by the Bliss Company, including Times Beach and countless others that we don't even know about because of the business he was in with the waste oil and chemical sprays. I would hopefully, or I would appreciate it if the council would vote no on PC 1823 and PC 2523. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair would note that no one on Zoom has raised their hand, but the department did receive an additional card from the room. Mr. Gurer.
Good evening, Tim Gerler, Ward 6, 2727 St. Albans East Drive. For proximity's sake, we're about 750 feet from the subject property. There's been plenty of commentary tonight that I won't recap here, but I would say this, is I don't envy your position this evening in the sense that you get to weigh out what are mitigating and aggravating circumstances for this piece of property. There's been a tremendous amount of aggravating conditions that have been added to the docket tonight that haven't been heard previously, and I hope that those weigh in with your decision on how you should move forward with that. But I'll add one more thing and maybe change the angle of the axe while you're considering the vote on both PZ 18 and PZ 25-23. And that is simply this. When FARS was first created nearly 75 years ago, they truly started as a family-run business. It operated out of their backyard and has been run by multiple generations of that family for years. That has now changed. There is now a corporate company that has moved into Wildwood to further what they want to do with that business moving forward. And my concern is this, is that if we change how we have that zoning, or if we change and let them operate in a way that would expand that business operation that is directly in the backyards of so many people that you've heard from tonight, what other places within the limits of Wildwood would also face that same risk? Because what sometimes starts as something small can sometimes grow into something big. And so I'd ask you what others have asked you about keeping the master plan and the zones in mind, is how, without even the other aggravating conditions that have been presented, how that sets the tone for future votes on how areas in Wildwood might be protected or might be exposed to changes that could be voted on in the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, we have two on Zoom with their hands up. Mr. Larsson was first and is on his way in.
Okay. State
Hello,
your name
my
and
name is Brian. My name is Brian Larsson. I'm at 2901 Country Point Court in Wildwood, Missouri, and I'd like to speak against PZ 1823 and 2523. Fundamentally, just to add to what others have said, I don't believe that Wildwood is equipped to provide ongoing regulatory oversight to the evolving business of what a research and development site would entail 15, 20, 30 years into the future, as we've seen with other conditional use permits nearby. For example, Ameren UE, when those businesses decide to do things that the city is unaware of them for years and years into the future. And I don't believe that Wildwood is equipped to provide the necessary regulatory oversight in order to ensure that it stays with the intended use. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker on Zoom is Ms. Han, and she'll be promoted.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to reiterate what's already been said. I'm Judy Han. I live at 19073 Bear Trail Road in the Wild Horse Creek subdivision across from the site. And I just want to reiterate the concern that I have of turning that area into an industrial area. As you know, I've made comments at previous meetings, not only about this, but also about the concern of the Ameren Tower, the 200-foot tower that is proposed to go up. So if we put a tower there and we let an industrial business come in, that area is just going to end up looking like the industrial area down in the Chesterfield Valley. So I would ask you to also please consider all of the other residents' comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, one additional speaker card from the council chambers, Ms. Bayan. Leslie Bayan.
I wasn't going to speak, but I thought I should add a couple of comments. I'm Leslie Bayan. I'm at 2611 Woodstone Trail Drive in Wildwood, directly across from Farrs. We've always enjoyed Farrs Nursery. It's been a great business to buy plants and everything. It's been great. But when we heard this, we were really not informed in our area, and we're literally feet away from Farrs. I hear that there had been some talk about having discussions with the neighbors at Questover, which is directly across the street from our community. But I don't think we were made aware of it at all. So this is all new to me. But I just want to bring up something in addition to the concerns addressed by everyone, which are real, and that's property values. I'm a realtor, and I will say that my concern would be too, if we have a commercial business, how that's going to affect resale values in the area. A lot of people move into the area simply because they want the quiet, they want nature, etc. And if there are 24/7 lights, or if there's lighting that affects the quality of life, etc. in our communities, we're looking at lower property values. We're also looking at selling our properties at a lower value should we choose to move out of the area, which really none of us want to do. But it's just another perspective to think about when making these considerations on zoning and planning changes for the area. And that's it.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
comments.
Mr. Chair, the department has not received any additional speaker cards, and on Zoom, there are currently no hands raised for the public comment session. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's see. All right. So I didn't just talk, no one brought it up with me, but it's been brought up before when we have meetings like this to adjust the agendas to, since most everyone here seems to be for the FAR greenhouse, moving that to the front of the agenda. Would there be an interest in doing that with the commission? Commissioner Helfrey?
Well, I think that if we move one, we have to move them both up and do them, address them both.
Yeah.
So I would be for that.
Thank you. All right, Mayor Bolin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also be in favor of that, and I would agree with Commissioner Helfrey relative to considering the two collectively, which would probably need a separate motion. But I would just want to make sure from our city attorney, given that this is in the middle of public participation, that doing so would be legally acceptable.
Mayor, I would suggest getting through public participation when we get to the, after the public hearing, when we get to the actual items, that we do so at that time.
Okay, so go ahead and move through the public hearings and then do it.
Yep, I thought he might say that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. In that case, we will move on to the public hearings first. In the city of Wildwood, public hearings are truly intended to accept comments and questions concerning these posted items. Since these requests are being presented at a public hearing, no action is planned on these items tonight, and consideration of them is to be taken no earlier than the February 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. This approach ensures the members of the commission will hear all opinions before taking any action. The city's Department of Planning will address the comments, questions, and concerns that are raised tonight and include them as part of its formal recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Anyone in attendance at City Hall tonight wanting to speak should fill out a speaker's card and leave it with Mr. Newberry. Those in attendance via the Zoom webinar platform should put the raise hand feature or use the raise hand feature to indicate you wish to speak at these hearings. A team member will add you to the list of speakers, which will then be communicated to me as chair, and I will invite you to speak when it is your turn. The public hearing process is outlined in the Public Hearings Guidelines pamphlet, which can be found on the table at the entry area to the council chambers. These guidelines are also provided on tonight's online meeting agenda. The commission will allow all parties adequate time to present their position. As outlined in the Public Hearing Guidelines pamphlet, speakers who are designated as a group speaker representing more than 5 individuals will be allocated 5 minutes to speak. Those individuals representing themselves will be allocated 3 minutes to speak. And the petitioner will be allocated 15 minutes to speak. In addition, information on these items can be found on the city's website at www.cityofwildwood.com. The commission would like to thank you for your cooperation and participation in tonight's hearings. So first on the agenda, we have PZ 26-23. Mr. Vrinich.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chair, 27-23 is the tandem or the partner in the request, so I will read both, and I believe the petitioner is prepared to present on both. PZ 26-23 Fisher and Frickel Custom Homes LLC, care of Christy Stackle, 695 Trade Center Boulevard, Suite 200, Chesterfield, Missouri 63005. A request for modification of the Town Center Regulating Plan for a tract of land that is currently designated by it as Workplace District to Neighborhood General District to accommodate its use for up to 34 single-family detached dwellings on individual lots with associated street and pedestrian networks, required public spaces, and stormwater management facilities, all in association with an 8.34-acre tract of land that is located at the northeast corner of State Routes 100 and Route 109. St. Louis County locator numbers 23V140245, 23V140218, 23V140162, and 23V140227. Street addresses 17100, 17130, 17150 Taylor Road, and 2346 State Route 109. Amended C8 Plan Commercial District and NU Non-Urban Resident District, Ward 5. And 27 and 28-23 Fisher Frickel Custom Homes LLC, care of Krista Dents, 695 Trade Center Boulevard, Suite 200, Chesterfield, Missouri 63005. A request for change in zoning for a total of 4 properties, which are currently designated either amended CA Plan Commercial District, street addresses 17100 and 17130 Taylor Road and 2346 State Route 109. St. Louis County locator numbers 23V140245, 23V140218, and 23V140227, and or NU Non-Urban Resident District, street address 17150 Taylor Road, St. Louis County locator number 23V 140162 to the R4 7,500 square foot resident district with a planned residential development overlay district, PRD, such being in association with an overall tract of land that is 8.34 acres in size and located at the northeast corner of State Routes 100 and 109 west of Taylor Road, formerly Otherton Road. Proposed use, a maximum of 34 single-family detached dwellings on individual lots with street and pedestrian networks, required public spaces, and stormwater management facilities, Ward 5.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as usual, the department has prepared a brief presentation to familiarize you with the location of the subject site, along with some photographs. This first image is an aerial image of the area, the light blue triangular area, the intersection of 109 and State Route 100 is the subject tract. To its east is the newly completed Villages at Brightleaf subdivision. The next image is admittedly a dark image, but the intent of it being provided is to show the built-out street network that's associated with the Brightleaf neighborhood in relation to the subject property. And then the next is a color rendering that the petitioner has prepared for tonight's presentation of the proposed residential development. To bring your attention to just a couple of areas on this image. It's the intersection here of Fireglow Drive and Taylor Road, and then Sandalwood Creek and Taylor Road, where several of the photographs were taken from that you'll see in the next slides, as well as the trail, the existing trail along the frontage of the property along State Route 100, where a number of photos were taken as well. The next series of photos, again, are taken at those two street intersections. This is Taylor Road and Fireglow Drive looking to the east. This is the same location, view to the west. Subject site is across the street here to the left side of the image. And this is looking to the north at that same intersection into the Villages at Brightleaf subdivision. The next is standing at that same street intersection, looking towards the south, towards the subject site. And then to the west, the intersection of Sandal Creek Drive and Taylor Road. This is looking to the east. This is a view looking to the west, again, with the subject site on the left-hand side of the photo. And then this is looking north into the Sandalwood Creek condominium development. I'm standing at that same location, looking directly south into the subject site. And these photographs are taken looking to the west and into the subject site at the current terminus of the trail and sidewalk network that was constructed along with the Villages at Brightleaf development. And this is a location, I'll point out the highway sign here in the middle of the photograph, standing on the trail, looking towards the north and west, towards the subject site. Standing near the same location, looking directly to the north, looking into the subject site. And this is farther, I think, east on the trail, looking towards the west with the subject site on the right-hand side in the photograph. And then this is standing beyond that highway sign I pointed out earlier, looking to the east. That concludes the department's presentation of photographs and exhibits. And Mr. Chair, as Mr. Vunich mentioned, the petitioner is in attendance and prepared to present regarding these items.
Okay.
Thank you.
Would the petitioner like to come forward?
Good evening, Commissioner, members of the commission. My name is Christy Stackle. I'm with Fisher and Fritchell Homes. I'm here with another member of our team, Mr. Mike Faulkner from Sterling Engineering. Another member of our team, Rusty Saunders with Loomis Associates, has helped assemble some of our submittals relative to trees and landscaping. I'll try not to use the 15 minutes and reserve that for any questions then after any other speakers. So we've tried to put together a brief presentation here. The parcel is, as mentioned, is a total of 8.34 acres. It's the northeast corner of Highway 100, 109. It is adjacent to the Villages of Brightleaf. The property's access is off of New Taylor Road or Old Etherton. It does not have access to Highway 100 or 109. The property boundaries are kind of hard to see. And from a lot of the photographs that staff put together, those are photographs of property that is either right away or part of the trail system and are not part of this property. Certainly the frontage along Taylor Road, looking into it, that makes sense. But if you can see on the photograph above, the along 109, there's the trail, and then there's a series of power lines that are back up in the trees, up in the woods. Our property, or this property, begins after that, away from the highway. Same can be said along Highway 100. there's a considerable distance from the trail that you might have seen in those pictures to the property line, and there's quite a bit of vegetation, trees that are within that boundary and right of way or property that's owned by either the state or the city. Go to the next one. So briefly, I just wanted to put together some history of the site. The site actually used to have Highway 109 running through it. When Highway 109 built a new bridge in 1974, they relocated westerly. And then on that photograph on the far left, you can see actually where the old roadway went through this property. And it's the reason why one of the parcels is actually sort of an odd shape that's on that boundary. You can also see in that photograph that at that point in time, the site was primarily agricultural and did not have a lot of vegetation on it, other than the trees that were right along old 109. Going into 2002, around 1994, St. Luke's Properties bought that series of parcels, and their plan was eventually to build a urgent care facility. It was in their long-range plans. They got it zoned for C8 commercial before Wildwood existed in St. Louis County, and had a number of extensions, but never came forward with a final development plan for C8 commercial. But it's zoned for C8 commercial, which would allow for a 3-story, 60,000 square foot building. Going into 2010, they continued to maintain the property. They mowed it. They kept the invasive species down, honeysuckle, Bradford pears, things like that. Around 2014, they ceased taking care of the property to the extent that they were. And can you go back, Travis? Since then, it's really become overgrown with a lot of honeysuckle, underbrush, and invasive tree species. I'm bringing all that up because when you look at the aerial photograph, it looks like it's a forest, but it's really not. And we have done a tree stand delineation and submitted that to the city with any particular woodlands identified in trees. Go forward, Travis. So I just wanted to share a couple additional pictures. These are pictures from the outward perspective from Highway 100 and Highway 109. Again, talking about where our property boundary begins. If you look on the 2 top pictures, the property boundary begins beyond the power lines, which is beyond all of those trees and beyond all that vegetation. None of that is on our property. That is all outside of our property. Once you get up into our property, it's been cleared by Ameren. It consists of trees that have grown in the old road bed from old 109 and a few trees that have grown intermittently throughout the site. Same can be said along 100. There's a picture from the pedestrian bridge that crosses 100. All of that vegetation along the off ramp and on this picture on the right that's along the trail, that's all on right-of-way property, not on our property. So there's a continuous buffer around this site. That's not part of the site. Travis. So the site, the zoning that we're asking for is a reduction from the C8 commercial down to a compatible use similar to the surrounding properties around it, and an extension of the project that we had at the Villages of Brightleaf. The Villages of Brightleaf was, sorry, I'm jumping. Was in the town center neighborhood general and town center neighborhood edge. And this site is currently in the land use plan as workplace, neighborhood workplace because of the C8 zoning. that that Wildwood inherited prior to its existence. We're asking for you to consider downzoning that to be compatible with neighborhood general, similar to the Brightleaf project, and allow for an R4 planned residential district, again, compatible and similar to the Brightleaf project. So when we look at the planning, when Brightleaf was presented and worked through by all the parties, we were all a part of creating that project. We extended Taylor Road along parallel to 100 and connected it through to Old Taylor or to Old Etherton and Taylor. And the idea was, from a planning standpoint, to not have houses backing to the highway and create a higher architectural standard for the sides of those homes and entryways into villages. And so when we look at this parcel, that's our intent, is to carry that planning concept further by enhancing Taylor Road along the frontage of this property, widening it so that it's the same standard as it is on the rest of it as it goes over to the light and through Brightleaf, and create side streets that have these small pockets of homes on them and loops through that triangular portion of the site. So looking at it at a larger view there, you would have 3 streets that would run perpendicular to Taylor Road, small clusters of houses, and then another cluster of houses on the street that turns and loops through. Taylor Road sits higher than the roundabout down at 109 and 100 by about 40 feet. So the way we would grade that site is we would slowly bring those perpendicular streets down with the flat street running the length. And then all the stormwater would drain down to a lake with a fountain and a walking trail that connects through, and would help serve as a buffer and also a beautification feature to that corner. Again, it's hard to see on this photograph, but what we're trying to show there is all the vegetation that is remaining outside of our property boundary lines. And again, what our proposal is trying to be a consistent planning concept, a consistent architecture, consistent design standards, and a continuation of Brightleaf, and not a commercial 3-story, 60,000 square foot building. So that's our proposal. As far as the units, we would go through the same process. I understand maybe ARB doesn't exist, but what we're proposing there is the same style and design, probably updated colors and materials that we would go through the city's review process on, but it's a continuation of the architectural designs. They were approved by Wildwood's ARB. They've been through all of the design town center standards, and it's a continuation of that same concept. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I could probably sum this up if I could ask him a question. I just make sure I understand correctly. You're going to take a commercial property. You're going to clean up an unkept property. You're going to put residential with no direct access to 109 or 100, the busy intersection. Now, stranger things have happened, but Travis, do we have any speaker cards if someone wants to comment?
Mr. Jackson, the department has not received any speaker cards regarding this item.
Oh. Okay. I just want to make sure I got there.
That's correct.
Yeah. Commissioner Halford.
Thank you for your service. Jim Kranz, 536 Copper Lakes Boulevard. And I just have a couple questions because I think it's just a little too high dense. I see a lot of this going on in Wildwood now. My question is, what is the square footage of those lots, Joe?
On average, it's about 5,300 square feet.
Normally it's, should be 10,000, not more than, less than 10,000 square feet would make a nice subdivision. And how wide are those roads, that street?
They will comply with the town center street network map. And generally that's a 40-foot right of way with a 26.1 foot wide pavement area.
So is there parking on the side?
26.1 feet does allow for parking on one side.
Would you consider that a narrow street?
I would consider a narrow street one that would preclude parking on both sides.
I would recommend 30 feet, which would give you 2 lanes and, but 8 feet for parking. And, a question for the, developer is how far are those houses apart? And yeah,
This isn't really a Q&A session. If you have comments,
well,
go ahead. But
well, I thought I could ask questions. Okay, thank you.
thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, we'll respond to Mr. Cran's question as part of our report.
Okay, thank you. Are there?
Do you want to continue with the speaker cards?
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Felicity McGaan.
Hello, my name is Felicity. I live in Windsor Crest, which is right across the way from there. And I think it looks like a lovely plan. I wouldn't mind that at all. However, I want to know more about how they're going to handle the traffic. There's probably an accident a day, at least one a day, if not more, fender benders and other things that block the entrance to our neighborhood through the roundabout. It's quite hazardous. We almost get hit most days leaving that neighborhood. And there's some kind of a traffic problem going on. So how would the new neighborhood affect that? And there's neighborhoods, and I love Fisher and Frischel, they're beautiful. But there's neighborhoods like Garden Valley and the other neighborhoods nearby that have larger tracts of land. And why aren't they considering something like that? There's a shortage of those type of homes in our area, not a shortage of small homes in our area. Hoping that they can investigate that and maybe change it a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, this department has not received any additional speaker cards for this hearing item. However, I want to note that there are a number of folks on Zoom
Okay.
that would like to speak to it. Use the raise hand feature.
Anyone on Zoom would like to speak on this? Use the raise hand feature. Seeing anyone, so Commissioner Helfrey.
So, Mr. Vunich, as far as the zoning that they're requesting, what is the setback for the garages from the fronts of houses in town center supposed to be?
Well, the front yard setback for the building is no greater than 20 feet. We actually use a build-to line in town center, which means we often prefer them closer to the edge of right-of-way than further. But regardless, the garage has to be set off from the front elevation of the dwelling so as not to be the most prominent architectural feature you see from the street.
Isn't it about 15 feet? Is that what it is?
When the town center neighborhood design standards were updated back in 2018 by the volunteer committee, they recommended 15 feet of difference or separation, so to speak. And that was memorialized by the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. There have been alterations to that via the site-specific ordinances, but at this stage, we're just in the investigative stage now.
The reason I ask it, I do understand that we're in the investigative stage, but the pictures that were submitted that show homes, I believe would not meet that standard as of right now. Also, I questioned the width of the lots. I'm just curious. They just look so very, very narrow. And then when you implied that you would, were going to improve on Taylor Road, would your improvements on Taylor Road go along the front of the property all the way down to where it intersects at 109? Or would the improvements on Taylor Road stop at Sandalwood Creek? And then finally, my favorite is, I think there needs to be more parking. So when it comes back in front of us, I'm hoping that there can be a better solution for parking and maybe an answer to those questions and the garages setback. Thank you.
We'll investigate all of those and talk with the developer as well.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Rubis?
I just want to, these are going to be owned properties, individually owned, not rentals.
Fisher and Fritchel, we only build for sale housing. It's fee simple. They're single family, detached. They are a villa concept. So that means there's grounds maintenance included. That's a continuation of the village. It's right next door, the Orchard Village. And maybe to answer your question as well, when we did Brightleaf, there was a relaxation of that particular standard that was agreed upon on that plan development agreement and that site development plan. And so that would be something that we would be asking for. It was, and instead of it being 15 feet, I think it's 6 feet or something. And it's a standard that was applied at Main Street Crossing, Brightleaf, and a number of other projects.
Are you looking for a response? Okay.
All right. Mr. Newberry, I see we have someone who raised their hand.
Yes, we do have an individual on Zoom as well as an additional speaker card if that's
Okay.
yeah, I'd like to proceed.
Go ahead and bring them forward.
Okay. I'm gonna call
Zoom
in
first.
Zoom first. Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll promote them.
I'd go ahead and unmute yourself and state your name and address, and then go ahead. Well,
Can you hear me?
now I can hear you.
Hello?
Go ahead.
So this is Brett Schulte from 17055 Fire Glow. I live in Villages at Brightleaf there. Just a couple questions. I had sent an email asking for some answers and did not receive it. The biobasin across from Taylor Road, is there going to be an inflow or an increase of water going into that area because of this development? As well as common ground area between Sandalwood Creek and Villages at Brightleaf. Is there going to be anything done to hamper that and or cause issues with that? And also, I don't see a mailbox area for that new development. That's all.
All right. Thank you for your comments.
And again, Mr. Chair, we'll address Mr. Schulte's questions at the time we prepare the report. But we do take into account the cluster mailboxes now. The initial, let's say, introduction of them, they caught the city by surprise, and now we factor that in as part of the overall design of a project.
So the cluster mailboxes, is that something the post office is basically requiring everywhere now?
At least in new developments, the Postal Service is requiring it, and there doesn't appear to be a waiver or variance process.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Newberry?
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Mr. Collins.
Steve Collins, 17061 Fireglow. So I live in Orchard Village, so I know what this place will look like, what they're proposing at least. And yes, they are close, but that's the way it was designed and that's the way we like it. So that's not a problem to me, but I sent in a fairly lengthy comment section list for your consideration, which basically said, I don't think you should approve it. I think this is going to have a number of impacts, both on the city as well as the community right around it, including traffic on Taylor Road. There's a lot of noise that we get already from the firehouse down here at 109 and Old Manchester. And I think the removal of all that green space in there is just going to make that worse. And I moved into that area and I like it a lot. I enjoy being in Wildwood partly because of the wild and the wood. And you're here proposing to take away green space, which in these days to me is another way to get, you're doing an environmental injustice to that, to us by taking away the green space. I think the noise level in that area is going to be ridiculous because of the fact that these sirens, which we hear a lot, is going to be really bad there because there will be no buffer at all. The rest of Brightleaf enjoys a very nice buffer between them and 100. And even over on the other side with 109, there's some buffer there. But if you put in these hard spaces, these folks that live in this new area, if they move in there, there's be nothing really to block their noise level from 100 and 109. So there's a number of other items that I put in my email to you, so I won't repeat those, but just to say that this to me is an awfully small piece of Wildwood when you've got a lot more area around the area that is open and could be developed. I know you're talking about doing it along this side of 100, rock and roll, but that to me is a very small spot that doesn't need to be filled up with more homes.
Thank you for your comments. No more. Any more comments from the commission?
Mr. Chair, if there could be a motion and a second with voice vote to close the hearing, we can move on to the next one. Thank you.
Commissioner Helfrey?
I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
Let's see. Seconded by Commissioner Jackson. All those in favor, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, that public hearing is closed. Next, we have PZ 30-23.
PZ 30-23, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. A request for the consideration of the dissolution of the City of Wildwood's Architectural Review Board by deleting in its entirety Chapter 415.220 Architectural Review Board requirements of the Code of Ordinances, while also evaluating other certain changes to Chapter 415.380 miscellaneous regulations of the same Code of Ordinances relative to Section I-2, items A through E, 1, 2, architectural review in all zoning districts while studying all available options to carry forward its current powers and duties thereafter, all wards.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Department of Planning is presenting to you tonight the start of a process for consideration of changes with the possible dissolution of the Architectural Review Board. As is noted in the primer, the Architectural Review Board has been a component of the city's land use processes since almost its inception. The consultant, Andres Dewani, that did create our town center plan, recommended that with the set of guidelines and design standards, it was incumbent upon the city to have experts review proposals within the boundary of that special area of Wildwood to assist. Initially, the ordinance creating the Architectural Review Board required 5 licensed registered architects as participants. Over the course of time, and now with term limits set forth by the city charter, fulfilling that requirement became very, very difficult. Most recently, changes have been made to allow professional engineers, landscape architects, planners, and others to participate, to the point that at this stage, the city only has one practicing architect as part of the review board. The selection and nomination and integration of architects onto the board remains a problem. And it has become a problem that no longer can just be ignored. And so the purpose of tonight's public hearing that has been recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission for discussion purposes is to see if the problem can be solved. Is there a way to salvage the existing architectural review board? Or is there another entity that can assume that responsibility that isn't dependent solely on architects? Or can it be in engagement of an architectural firm or individual? And finally, can it be deferred to another board, commission, or entity of the city? Tonight, the department does not present a recommendation. Obviously, it's a public hearing, but if there are any questions regarding the information provided in the document as part of the discussion tonight, the department would be glad to answer them at this time or after public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Are there any public comments?
Mr. Chair, the first speaker regarding this item is Mr. Rohrig, followed by Mr. Thompson.
Hello, my name is Alan Rohrig. I'm a resident in Ward 1, 18052 Babbler Woods Road. I've spoken before on the retaining of the Architecture Review Board. I'm a principal in an architecture firm, owner principal for 19 years in Ladue. We've been before many architecture review boards. We've worked with many architecture review boards to work through issues, not only just aesthetic, make it pretty issues, but actual functional issues that having the professionals who are in the industry come in and be able to weigh in and say, you know what, maybe that porch could benefit the whole your whole design by moving over, or perhaps the site placement could be a little bit better. I think you run the risk of, if we're talking about eliminating the entire architecture review board and coming in with a consultant, which really, if you go to a doctor and they give you a dire prognosis, what's the first thing you're going to hear? Get two more opinions, right? So I don't think it's a good idea to rely on just a singular person to do the review, because you lose the benefit of multiple eyes looking at the project. And I think it also benefits the residents of Wildwood if they have an issue in their subdivision with a house that seems completely out of place, or even if there's going to be a commercial building that's going to be completely out of place. There's a board that really is there to address those issues specifically, and not just a subcommittee of the Planning and Zoning Commission, so that they can adequately speak to those things. You know, I think it's kind of a big mistake to just say we're having trouble filling the positions. I think it would behoove the city to take a step back before dissolving the whole board and maybe forming a committee, or at least have a meeting with the residents and the professionals to try and figure out if there's maybe a good way to solve the problem of filling empty seats, so that we retain that beneficial arrangement for the benefit of the community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Mr. Thompson, followed by Ms. Vedvig.
Good evening. I'm Russ Thompson. I live at 17632 Myrtlewood Drive in Wildwood. I am neither an architect nor a PE, but my background is last 27 years in business development for a large local commercial building material supplier. I do a lot of work with architects, helping them specify products for jobs. I've been in a lot of buildings with a critical eye looking at product. I do have a little bit of a prepared statement. Spoke to one of my architect friends who's been on an architectural review board in another local city here for quite a long time. And I think she ordered it quite well. An ARB protects your investment, your home, your building, your neighborhood, and your city. Appearance does matter. An ARB protects the aesthetics of a city, which in turn attracts residents, businesses, visitors, and investment. Assuming everyone thinks his or her project looks good, they're looking at it individually and with a prejudiced eye. The ARB looks at it in the context of the whole and with an objective eye. Protecting aesthetics protects everyone's investment. Keeping the ARB is a good financial decision. I think that's worded quite well. My experience in this room is I've come to see a developer do a presentation because we wanted to supply that project, and I watched the ARB, and it was a large senior facility. A couple of things that came up, they questioned the HVAC placement on the building as to what kind of noise it would produce for residents. Another thing they brought up was the mix of EIFS, exterior insulation finish system, with brick. And they actually asked for more brick for a more aesthetically pleasing building. And then the trash enclosure around the dumpsters was going to be wood fence painted some color. And they requested that they make that brick. So all these things are they're small details, but in the big picture, when you're driving down the street or when you're looking at a facility, it makes the entire area just, it's more aesthetically pleasing, and it helps property values, and it makes Wildwood. I've been out here 3 years, and my kids still laugh when they come to visit because our gas station is nicer than our grocery store where we came from. So an ARB is something I would urge you guys to find a way to keep. Reach out to the St. Louis AIA, see if maybe some of the young leaders in the Christopher Kelly AIA leadership program would be willing to get on the committee, get some experience under their wings. I just think it's a great idea to look at any routes to keep an ARB.
Thank you for your
very
comments.
Mr. Chair, and the next speaker is Ms. Vedvig, followed by Mr. Gunther.
Wanted to hear Mr. Gunther first for inspiration. Jean Vedvig, 16709 Clayton Road, Wildwood, Missouri, 63011. I speak to you tonight as not an architect or an engineer, but I did work in the field for over 22 years for 2 large firms. But in addition to that, I was part of the group that helped to incorporate the city. And we had a great vision. And that has been carried out, and we've had great success. And that success was dependent upon the good volunteers like yourself and members of the Architecture Review Board. You're sitting in one of the best success stories in the city, town center. So I don't want anyone to live in 1995. It's not a good idea, but we don't want to kick out the pillars that helped to define the community and how we look today. One of the things that I have missed in watching the meetings over the years is the amount of, we don't have as much collaboration as we used to. The Architecture Review Board, the Planning Commission, and the council often met to discuss developments. And what happens is there's a communal whole there that is met, and knowledge is shared and information, and usually what comes out is something better than where you started. So I think that's really important. The other thing is, I'll go back to my consistency. There has been a comment that having an ARB could cause delay, or it could be redundant. There's nothing that could be further from the truth. Typically, if you look at the history of this community and others, as the gentleman before me just spoke,
those type of meetings that are held with a professional, usually the objections come to the top. And there's a solution worked out. And most of the time you end up with something that is better than where you started. Plus it helps again with the knowledge base. So I would implore you to please even form a collection of people to kind of come together and figure out what can be done. I liked his idea of contacting AIA, and don't work to eliminate the Architectural Review Board, but work to develop it and strengthen it and bring it back to where it once was. They will be your biggest asset when you're making these difficult decisions. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Mr. Gunther, followed by Mr. Scott.
Good evening. I'm John Gunther, 18041 Melrose Road, Ward 1. I'm here tonight regarding the possible dissolution of the City of Wildwood's Architectural Review Board. As a resident of this area since 1966, I'm a fellow of the American Institute of Architects for Design, a member of the founders of the City of Wildwood, 1995, the first Planning and Zoning Commission, 1995 to 99, and founding member of the Architectural Review Board, 1997, serving in various capacities till 2014. I served the City of Wildwood continuously for its first 19 years in various capacities. I respectfully ask that the Architectural Review Board remain intact and of service to our city, its citizens, and the built and natural environment. From its inception, the ARB, the Planning and Zoning Commission, and the Department of Planning have worked together effectively and collaboratively with very positive and high-quality results. This arrangement can be thought of as a three-legged stool, each in support of the other. It is also a system of checks and balances. It is not redundant. It is efficient. It is effective. The ARB and the review process benefits our citizens by asking for better designs, and we benefit the developers and their architects proposing new projects as they seek clarification and direction. The city benefits by making better decisions with greater knowledge and expertise provided by architects serving on the ARB. This approach has proven to be efficient and of great value, contributes to the quality built environment, and helps maintain property values. I can assure you our city needs a functioning Architectural Review Board now as much as we ever have, and I just witnessed it with the discussion and the lack of questions on the previous residential proposal. Through recent meetings, we learned the effort to dissolve the ARB. We were told the function of the ARB is now being done and can be done by P&Z, or a P&Z subcommittee without benefit of professional architects. Suggesting that non-architects can adequately determine appropriate designs by comparing projects to existing buildings in the town center is naive at best.
1 minute.
It was also suggested that architectural consultants can be hired at a cost to our city to review our new projects after they prepare their fee proposal and study our requirements. If the city wants to formalize a more efficient way to review projects, then keep the ARB with the citizen professional architects who get to the heart of the matter at the first review. Difficulty in finding architects to serve on the ARB has been cited. This after imposing term limits on dedicated professionals who have volunteered their services and expertise for 26 years since the ARB was founded in 1997. If there are not enough architects, we should study city regulations and policies, term limits, and the possibility of serving again, and the number and composition of members on the ARB, instead of discarding years of professional knowledge and service. If we are truly taking into account what is in the best interest of our city, we should study and fix the issues of concern regarding the ARB instead of dissolving it. Please do not dissolve the ARB. Do not abandon our city's time-proven architectural review process, a well-established framework of our citizens count on. Please do not push our city into mediocrity where anything goes. Take time to study and address any concerns.
Time's up.
The ARB out of hand. Let's work together.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Mr. Scott, followed by Ms. Link.
Oh, thank you.
I'm Steve Scott. Ward 6, 3900 Tamara Trail. I'm an architect. I'm a past member of the Historical Preservation Commission, of which I've termed out. Speaking on for the Architecture Review Board, I've had one project that I've worked on. It was a pond school. Working with them, I found them very good to work with. They were very helpful. They had good suggestions. We followed them. Things went very smoothly. I think it's very important that we retain Architecture Review Board or some sort of architecture review. It is very important that the Architecture Review Board consists of architects or engineers or urban planners. But there should be, the majority should be architects. I understand you have trouble finding architects, enough qualified people in Wildwood. Well, when I retired from the Historical Commission, I volunteered for the Architecture Review Board. I haven't heard anything, so I don't know about that. But if that can't be done, it is essential that you retain some sort of architecture review and advice to the commission or to your commission, whether that be a volunteer or be actually a retained architect. And I think you can, if careful selection to know what your feelings are, or what direction you want them to go on, you can find an architect that can do that for you. So if it's at all possible to retain the architectural time?
1 minute.
If it's impossible to retain the Architectural Commission, then to go with a retained architect. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Ms. Link, followed by Mr. Salvatore.
I didn't plan to say anything about this tonight, but I want to say 2015, we were looking for a new home. I have acetabular dysplasia. I've had both hips replaced. I woke up from surgery in 2014 and couldn't feel my leg and haven't felt it since. I had one surgery, was looking at a series of surgeries. We moved from our house in South County that we lived at 25 years from a house that was paid for to a house we'll pay off when we're 90. And we looked all over, and our real estate agent finally said, "Have you thought of Wildwood?" And I thought, well, I knew of Wildwood because in South County, we were trying to incorporate and do what Wildwood did. And so when we met over at Lou Ellen's pub with her, I looked around and I thought, this area is so well planned. It's so beautiful. You had the foresight and the effort that you all put together and all the right decisions that you made to make this happen. And one of them is to have professionals have a second opinion and an eye on how to plan things. I would have no idea to do that. And I just want to say, I'm happy to live in Wildwood, and I'm happy that all these people are so concerned, and I'm happy he's still here. And all of you. And it's about making the right decisions. And the Architectural Review Board helps us make the right decisions of what goes into Wildwood. And thank you, everybody. I know I seem crabby sometimes. You're probably like, security. But I'm here. I want to say I'm happy about, everything. And even you, 1 minute guy.
I'm
I know
we all want to be here till midnight.
I know we do. But I want to just say I'm happy to be here, and thank you for everything you've done, and thank you, Mr. Vunich, for everything you do, and everybody. And I think we can keep Wildwood great by keeping the Architectural Review Board. And
All right,
this
thank
is
you.
why I read stuff.
All right, thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Mr. Salvatore, followed by Mr. Latherley.
Tony Salvatore. Mr. Beatty,
give that man a hand because you disrespected him. 19 years. He is one of the founders of Wildwood.
I'm
And
just trying to hold everyone
you
to
know
their
what?
time.
I'm talking. All right. He's a founder of Wildwood. You know that most founders refuse to come back here because of what has happened to this city in the last 8 years under the Bose administration and Joe Garitano back there. They could have stopped this. They want this. They want to ruin our cities. Thank you very much. Joe, I got it. You want a consultant? Sure, a consultant that you pay, that you have control over. And we also had somebody here at another time indicate that, well, the builders have their own architects. We ought to just trust them. Let's all trust the builders. They're architects. See how it goes. You know, I'm looking at this. You are upending this city. The roots, why this city was built, I mean, what was incorporated, you guys are tearing it apart. And I'm saying you guys, I'm saying Mr. Bowen, Garitano, and the rest of council. This is terrible, just terrible. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Mr. Lavalley, followed by Mr. Stevens.
Hi, my name is Dennis Lavalley. I live at 412 Steel Creek Pass. I'm the current chairman of the Architectural Review Board. I'm not an architect. I do have a rather long-term career, having worked with design, construction, and so have familiarity with it. So I'm not speaking really on behalf of the Architectural Review Board. I am speaking on behalf of myself. We're first exposed to the idea that this may be occurring at our last meeting. So we really have not had an extensive discussion or taken a position. But as a result of that, I just want to share a few observations from my term, which has probably been a year to a year and a half, I think, on the Architectural Review Board. And I guess without taking a position one way or the other, I don't know. My observation would be if we're looking at it, there may be simply some changes that could be made, which could be more effective. One you've heard reference to is term limits. As was indicated, we currently only have one architect on the board. It would be great to have more. I think, as I guess you would call ourselves lay people, I think we do contribute to that, but we're certainly, I'm not an architect. I'm familiar with some of those architectural concepts. So I think I would suggest that one issue to look at would be the term limits. The other that I think we've missed is that way back, I know when I first joined the board, there was some discussion of some training. Yes, I've been a city resident for over 30 years, but I was not involved in looking at the town center plan when it was designed. I think we may need some training for the Architecture Review Board members to help us better understand that history and the design standards and how we should intersperse with them. We're using our own judgment, perhaps without having the background that we should have for some of that process. Joe had mentioned some concepts the city was working with, and I think would be open to looking at those. At some point in the future, I may be able to come back with some more firm views. At this point, no position. Let's look if we're going to keep it with how we improve it. If we're going to keep it, don't know. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Mr. Stevens.
Niall Stevens, Ward 8. Just here to speak on the ARB and just encourage you to keep the ARB around if you need to remove the term limits, if you need to do better recruitment, if we need to bring in people from outside of Wildwood to serve on the board. I just encourage the committee to do that. The ARB serves to protect the residents. It's another layer because developers are always going to push to maximize profits. And whether it's Vicky, you were just talking about the setbacks in the last, development, they're always going to want to push those setbacks. They're always going to want to push, how big the garage should be, where the porch should be located to maximize profits. And the ARB should be there to push back to protect Wildwood, protect our property values, and to also just to keep with the plan of intent, which Wildwood was to stop the outer belt, save the green belt. That's why we're all here. That's why we care about this community. And so I think one of the biggest reasons that that I saw recently to keep the ARB is because sometimes these developers don't even know the difference between the front of the house and the back of the house. And you saw that with the TB development, the TB Realty development that's just down the street here that was offered up. You had an alleyway going through the subdivision, and they were calling the part of the house that faces an alleyway the front of the house. I've never been in a city where the front of a house is in the alley, and the developers can't even get that right. We got to have an ARB to protect property values and to protect Wildwood residents. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the department has not received any additional speaker cards, and currently there are no hands raised on Zoom.
Yeah, if anyone from Zoom would like to speak, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we will continue with the discussion amongst the board. Mayor Bolin.
If there are no interested parties speaking on Zoom, I would move to close the hearing on this matter.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor of closing it, say aye.
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 All those against? Abstain? I'm abstaining. All right, motion's closed. All right. Yes.
Something. For anyone in the crowd, the way the meetings are run, it's a Robert's Rules of Order. You can get the books, and that's how you keep order and keep the thing moving. Beatty's been our chair for a few years now, and he's done an exceptional job, and he's never been disrespectful for anyone. Unfortunately, from time to time, we have some hot topics, and they go a long time, and a lot of speaking from the public hearing and the public commentary. So you definitely have our support, and I know you've never been disrespectful to anyone, and I think you did run a great meeting. I just want that on the record.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Mayor Bolin.
When you're ready, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion relative to the next items on the agenda, starting with PZ 18-23. So I'll wait until you give the okay for that.
Okay. Yeah. Next on the agenda, PZ 18-23, Mr. Newberry.
PZ 18-23, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. A request for the consideration of modifications to the city's code of ordinances, specifically chapter 415.030, definitions, and chapter 415.090 in non-urban residence district, section C, conditional land use and development permits issued by the commission, which would allow for the addition of a new conditional type use to the existing list of them for the purpose of allowing agriculture, research and development activities as a function of a rural land use setting, along with a corresponding definition of the same, all wards.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Is there a desire to move the other item up as well, as was initially discussed by the commission?
Motion. I would make the motion that we move PZ 25-23 ahead of the next one so that it follows this one directly.
Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to amend the motion.
Okay.
And I would amend the motion that we rearrange the agenda to consider PZ 18-23 and 25-23 together at this point, because I believe they are inextricably linked.
All right. Are you acceptable to the amendment?
Yes, but I have a question for you, Mayor Bolin. If we link them together and we don't vote on them separately, then can this, does that allow the agriculture code modification to then come back in front of us? Or would it be better to keep them separate so that we can vote yay or nay on that and then yay or nay on the other?
Through the chair, it would depend on the vote on the motion if it's amended as I have proposed. If the motion is amended as I proposed that they be considered together, and the city attorney can correct me if I'm wrong, and it is defeated, then that would foreclose the ability to consider them separately.
Two items, if I may, Mr. Chair. One, I would take votes on them separately because one is a legislative decision, the other is administrative. The legislative decision should be first, that's 18-23. And of course, if 1823 doesn't pass, then the next item is precluded from passage. But I would take them as separate votes.
So that would mean that my approach would not be appropriate. And what was the motion from Commissioner Helfrey?
It's to consider 25-23 right after we consider 18-23.
Okay, and did that have a second?
Yes, it did. All right. So all those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, any abstain? All right, motion carries. All right, so let's see. So go ahead, Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the first item tonight is the draft letter of recommendation regarding potential changes to the NU non-urban resident district to add the described new conditional use, which would be agriculture, research and development activities. At a previous meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission did endorse the change, and the draft letter of recommendation reflects that action. As has been mentioned, if this particular item is not endorsed by the Planning and Zoning Commission, then the other item cannot proceed forward.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vunich. Commissioner Helfrey, and then I'll come to you, Mayor.
So first of all, I want to take the opportunity to say thank you to everybody who came tonight and voiced your opinion on that. And all the time that I've been on the Planning and Zoning Commission, this has not happened a lot. And I don't want you to think for 1 second that anything that you say doesn't get listened to, as was implied a couple times tonight. Personally, Mr. Vunich, I am not in favor of this. I spent a great deal of time over the weekend and highlighting lots of things. And I am not in favor of this agricultural research and development. It's simply because I just feel like it's too vague. I think it leaves too many doors open for me personally. And so I am going to make a motion. You'll have to help me with this to make a motion that I want to make a motion to say no to this.
Second.
Your motion,
My motion would be what, Joe? Mr. Vunich?
I believe the mayor has something to contribute.
Okay.
Well, before discussion, I just wanted to second the motion.
Okay. So how would my,
That's it. Just you're making
My-
a motion, just.
all right, so my motion is to deny the research and development
So,
category.
from the standpoint of the department, it would be to deny the draft letter of recommendation as presented.
I would like to deny the draft letter of resignation, a recommendation as presented. Thank you.
And the mayor has seconded it. Is there any other discussion on the matter?
Yeah, I just have one question. I know this came up before. How many businesses is this new ordinance for? I mean, how many do we have? I mean, you're just looking at long term. Is it just one right now?
The request by Solus Agri-Sciences started the discussion. There are no others that have been authorized because there's not the underlying regulations to support such. But again, the thought was, given the characteristics of some of our non-urban resident district zone properties, there might be an opportunity. Obviously, the conditional use permit process, if this were to be established, allows the Planning and Zoning Commission and ultimately City Council to make those decisions on a case-by-case basis. I think that's initially why the commission supported it. But obviously what you've seen tonight is an outpouring of concerns about opening, so to speak, this particular rural district to potential commercial or business-like activities.
I totally recognize the good governance intention of it. I always have hesitancy when an ordinance is for one business as it starts, and it's not like a several businesses. To create one thing for one entity always gives me concern in general, and that's all I'll say. But you were well intended. I got it.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Rubis? Can you turn your microphone on? Thank
Would
you.
we need a ordinance or a agricultural research and development in order to allow them to be in the industrial area?
We would not need to amend the underlying regulations of the M1 Industrial District. There are accommodations already, I believe, as part of that. What would happen there in the Wildwood portion of the Chesterfield Valley, a rezoning would only be required.
Okay.
All right. Mayor Bullen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think what we've seen this evening and at previous meetings relative to PZ 25-23 is indicative of why PZ 18-23 is not in the best interest of the city and its residents. I think that it is a wide expansion of the non-urban uses, and I think that even if that expansion were allowed, the ability from a practical standpoint to enforce the scope of that expansion is nearly impossible. Putting people inside greenhouses to monitor what's going on and constant testing, it's a slippery slope that just from a practical standpoint, I think is very unworkable and ultimately, I suspect, depending on the situation, quite costly for our residents. So I think that, that is why this change to the code should not proceed, and therefore enveloped within that, why 25-23 should not also proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just had one question before we vote on this. I'll admit I was initially, I liked the idea in the beginning, but other than say along Highway T, where else in the city do you think, if we were to pass this, where else do you think properties could really be affected? I don't feel like there's that many other tracts of agricultural land other than Chesterfield Valley that would potentially benefit if we were to allow this.
Mr. Chairman, it could be quite vast.
Well, I mean, I'm just trying, so much of our city is even out in the 3-acre area. I don't feel like there's that many greater than 3-acre lots left where you could really do something like this. And so I would have liked to see a potential map of where.
Well, if I may, if this were to become the code, then that would mean that the commission would be looking at those on a piecemeal case, one by one basis. And that I think is very dangerous. And I just don't think this is appropriate for the city. It's very difficult to tell whether a 3-acre lot or larger with certain characteristics could allow this, that, or the other. I just don't think that the non-urban zoning classification of our city is an appropriate venue for anything of this nature, and opening that box, I think, would be disastrous. Thank you.
No, I mean, I understand what you're saying, Mayor, but I'm trying to, I've got the map of Wildwood in my head here, and I like, yeah, maybe there's some stuff along Chesterfield Valley. Maybe a couple of those spots along Strucker Road. But yeah, to what everyone's saying, I do feel like this seems like it could be a one-off thing that we pass just for this or this specific instance. And And I do agree with what Commissioner Helfrey has said. It's probably not a good idea. Yes, sir.
I just have one question.
Yeah.
I just need a little help from you. I just make sure,
Okay.
because I'm overthinking this. When we do the vote,
Yeah.
if a vote of yes means we agree to deny, I don't want to get yes and no mixed up
Correct.
here.
A vote of yes denies the.
Okay, I kind of got confused in the discussion and forgot the motion. I want to make sure
Okay,
I know what
yeah.
I'm doing.
No, the motion is to deny the legislature. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yay.
Commissioner Cohn abstains.
Say that again, Commissioner Cohn.
Let's give him a moment.
You're muted, Ed.
Ed, you're muted.
You can come back to him after you.
All right, we'll come back. Yeah.
Next is Commissioner Depler.
Yes.
Commissioner Depler votes yes. Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubis. Come back to Mr. Cohn.
Yay.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn.
Yes.
Thank you.
Chair Beatty
Yes.
and Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, motion passes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
the draft letter of recommendation as now defeated will be rewritten as a denial and then ultimately go to city council for just receipt and filing, and then they'll
Okay.
be closed.
All right, thank you. So with this being denied, do we still need to vote on the other one?
I would ask Mr. Young, our city attorney, what would be the next appropriate step relative to 25-23?
Yeah, you do still need to vote on it because it is presented, but I think you have an obligation to deny it because the code does not support it.
Thank you. All right,
Mr. Chair, if Mr. Newberry
Yes.
could read the request into the record, I have a very brief statement.
okay. Mr. Newberry?
Hold on.
Okay, Mayor Boland?
I think we may need a motion to rearrange the agenda. Isn't there something?
Oh, we already had that motion.
Mr. Newberry?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Helfrey's motion captured the reordering of the agenda for both of these items.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
PZ 25-23 Solus Real Estate LLC, care of Dustin Snider, 18944 St. Albans Road, Wildwood, Missouri, 63038. A request for a conditional use permit CUP in the NU non-urban residence district to accommodate the use of the subject property, which is located on the south side of St. Albans Road, west of State Route 100, street address 18944 St. Albans Road, St. Louis County, locator number 23Y220108, and over 5 acres in size for the purposes of authorizing agricultural activities, specifically the research and development of products that are to be sold with the intent to increase their yields, improve their drought resistance, encourage the use of less soil additives, and or promote other common goals relative to growth in food production. These activities will occur in a controlled environment, including greenhouses and other buildings or structures. Proposed use, research, and development of agricultural products not intended for retail sale via an on-site sales room or within a traditional laboratory setting. Ward 6.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vinich?
Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, regarding the most recent action on PZ 18-23 and the department's recommendation of denial of this particular request, given the information provided, the department is respectfully requesting a motion to deny the request.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vinich. Commissioner Helfrey?
I will make it. I'm making a motion to deny the request.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Rubis, Mayor Boland?
I was seconding the motion. That's fine, doesn't matter.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote.
Commissioner Depler.
Yes.
Commissioner Depler votes yes. Commissioner Jackson.
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey.
Yes.
Commissioner Rubis. Commissioner Cohn.
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn votes yes. Chair Beatty
Yes.
and Mayor Boland.
Yes.
And Mayor Boland votes yes as well.
All right, motion passes. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, PZ 20-23. Mr. Newberry.
PZ 20-23, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. A request to review and consider the possible addition of a new section to the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance, chapter 415.400, sign regulations general, section G, wayfinding signs, which would allow for the placement of these types of representations upon publicly held lands, rights of way and/or easements, with such being limited to locations abutting arterial roadways as defined by the Master Plan's transportation element, wards 1, 4, 5, 7, and 8.
All right, thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vinich. Maybe wait until some of these people clear out a second. I can't imagine why they wouldn't want to hear the rest of the agenda.
Mr. Cohn thought that was funny.
I appreciate that, Mr. Cohn. All right, go ahead, Mr. Vinich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared for your consideration the draft letter of recommendation relating to an action taken by the commission on December 4th of last year. This action was to support the development of a pilot program for wayfinding signs in the city of Wildwood, along with accepting several of the new district names that would be utilized as part of this way signage program. The letter of recommendation reflects the favorable action by the commission and is ready for forwarding to city council after a vote tonight.
All right.
If there are any questions, the department would be glad to answer them at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Vinich. Discussion or motion? Commissioner Rubis? Is your mic on? Thank you.
What you are asking of us is to give you a positive vote on this so that it can go forward to the council.
Correct. And there are no regulations necessarily moving forward. It is just an authorization for the pilot program, which would select an area of town center to test and see if this is an effective tool or not before making regulations and making changes to current regulations.
Thank you.
Commissioner Helfrey?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Seconded by Commissioner Cohn. Any further discussion? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. So you said you would pick an area to try the pilot program. Did we decide, did I miss what area you were going to try it in?
For the most part, I believe city council will be asked to make that determination after the Planning and Parks Committee has considered the options. And so once that decision is made, the department will provide that information to the Planning and Zoning Commission. But for this particular instance, the thought was to let the city council make that initial action.
Huh. Okay. What if we have an opinion?
Certainly, the opinion would be more than welcome and would be part of any information that's forwarded to city council and its committee.
So as I look at this, there are several areas, State Route 100 at Manchester. Those are the suggested titles. Is that correct?
That's correct. There are 4 identified: Route 66, Downtown District, College District, and then there was a request to change the Bridge District, which was the area around Route 100, to something else, and we have yet to come up with that conclusion.
So the one that, if it was going to be a pilot program, the district that would be seen the most would be which one? The downtown district or Route 66 district?
Yes, any of those three, the college district with the YMCA, the community college, Meadows of Wildwood, Wildwood Square. There's a lot of traffic in that particular vicinity. Route 66, Old Manchester Road, obviously has a number of residents and businesses along it. And then, of course, downtown district, which is the anchor to our town center, the Deerbergs Town Center development, the Wildwood Town Center development, et cetera, and City Hall.
Okay, so I'm just going to say that I know that you said that you'd like the city hall to decide, but I would like to maybe give them the recommendation of using either Route 66 district or the downtown district, because it seems to me those are two districts that have most of the traffic and have a lot of businesses that might not be seen very easily. So, you know, I would like to give that suggestion. So.
Well, deferring to Mr. Young again, if the maker of the motion, which was you, Commissioner Helfrey, would like to amend it to support those two locations as part of the forwarding of the draft letter of recommendation, I think that would be appropriate.
I would like to make that amendment then. Thank you, Mr. Vintage.
All right, and, seconded by Commissioner Jackson. Any further discussion?
Mr. Young, is that okay?
Well, I would say I think it's really an amendment to the main motion. So a separate vote on the amendment to attach it to the main motion would be appropriate at this time.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so vote on the motion to amend it. You good on a second there?
I am. Is this an aye? I don't think it has to be roll call, does it?
Yeah, this is just a yay, nay.
Yeah.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any opposed? Any abstain? All right.
Abstain.
All right. So that passes, and then any further discussion on the overall motion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubis, Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn votes yes. Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler votes yes. Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
and Mayor Boland.
No.
Mayor Boland votes no.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next on the agenda, PZ 29-23, Mr. Vinich.
EZ 29-23, Ronald James, 16391 Windcrest Falls Way, Wildwood, Missouri, 63005, is seeking the review and action of the Planning and Zoning Commission to construct an outdoor game court, half-court basketball court that is 3,600 square feet in area and to be located at 16391 Windcrest Falls Way, St. Louis County, locator number 21U 210282, Windcrest Subdivision, Plat 5, Lot 126. R1A, 22,000 square foot resident district with a planned residential development overlay district, PRD. This request is to be reviewed in accordance with chapter 415.120 R1, 22,000 square foot resident district regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning code, which establishes standards and requirements for outdoor game courts relating to their construction by the Planning and Zoning Commission, Ward 2.
Thank you, Mr. Vinich. Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department is prepared for your consideration a recommendation regarding the outdoor game court proposal that Mr. Vunich just described into the record. The department is prepared a slide presentation to show where the property is located. It's located in the Windcrest subdivision at the terminus of Windcrest Falls Way. Let's make it better. Here's a zoomed out aerial showing the location near the intersections of Strecker and Clayton Road. The property is a 2.34 acre parcel. Over 2/3 of the parcel is protected under the city's established natural resource protection area, which you can see on this plan sheet. The natural resource protection line is kind of abuts the proposed court location in this instance. The proposed game court is a half-court basketball court. It's approximately 3,600 square feet in area. The shape is irregular to fit the disturbable area on the site. And the department visited the property a couple of weeks ago and took some photographs. So the current driveway is shown in the first photograph on the left. You can see that there's an existing basketball goal there in the driveway facing the neighboring property line, which the department will address later in its presentation. The proposed outdoor game court is proposed to be located at the end of the driveway, but not level with it. It's proposed to be a retaining wall that's about 7 feet tall that creates an area below the driveway where the game court will be is proposed to be placed. The next photo on the right is the area where the game court is proposed. The farthest away post of the deck, the existing deck, is the southern edge of the outdoor game court, and that is the level at which the court will be graded to sit. And then this is a photo standing at the location I just described, that farthest away deck edge, looking up towards the driveway. Got a couple of human beings in there for scale, as well as the existing basketball court. Again, there will be a retaining wall that's 7 feet tall here, where the individuals are standing approximately, and then creating a flat surface below the grade of the driveway to create the outdoor area for the outdoor game court. This is a cross section that may help you understand that a little bit better. The area here to the left is the existing driveway, then that 7 foot retaining wall I've been describing, and then the flat area for the court, and then another set of retaining wall to create a level area for the placement of the court. Revisiting the plan sheet. With that description of the proposed improvements, one last thing I'd like to mention: the court will be accessed by a new set of stairs that is shown over here by the deck. To access that area of the court from the drive area and the deck. The department is recommending approval of the outdoor game court. The location of the court is outside of the natural resource protected area. It's outside of any of the established setbacks, and it's not encroaching onto any existing utility easements, which is a major component of the city's regulations for this type of improvement. The department also note there's no proposed tree removal to accommodate the court. And believes that we will be remedying a challenging situation with the existing hoop being in the driveway and facing the neighboring property line. And it creates a more desirable location with more control over the projectiles, the balls associated with the play, to keep the balls on the subject property and not to trespass. The department has established in its recommendation report a number of conditions. First and foremost, that an engineered plan be provided to ensure that disturbance and stormwater and grading issues are addressed through the permitting process, that there be the proposed netting on the south side of the court be required, as well as the extension of some netting on the western portion, in this case to the right, to again control the projectiles. And then again on that western section, it would be to also have an enhanced landscape plan with more plantings than what it is shown here. And then two last things: a verification that the existing hoop in the driveway be removed, so that situation is no longer in place, and that the homeowners association be engaged and be required to provide approval. The homeowners association has weighed in on this project with the department. And one item that's not included in the department's report that it would like the commission, request the commission to add as part of any motion tonight, would be that the surface of the outdoor game court be a sound dampening type material that's available on the marketplace for this type of facility. And that was a condition of the homeowners association review of this project. So again, the department's available for any questions, but it's recommending approval of the outdoor game court with a set of conditions associated with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry.
I'll make sure I got this right in my head. Our attorney, homeowners trump oftentimes what we do. If the homeowners association says you must do something, then you must do it, or you can or you cannot. So they want us to add a sound dampening. Wouldn't they just do that themselves? Say, we will not approve this as a homeowners. I don't think the city needs to get involved in that particular instance, unless it's a noise ordinance, convince me. I'm just questioning that honestly, that, I mean, they can do it. They don't need us to do that if that's a requirement, correct?
Commissioner Helfrey, I believe that's
Well,
your subdivision.
That's my subdivision. And so there's nothing in the bylaws that says that you can't, that you have to have sound dampening stuff. I know this. So I don't care one way or another about the sound dampening stuff. It's basketball and you're going to hear the blink, blink, blink of the basketball. You're going to hear it when it hits the net, and that's just the way it is. And I think that if you require them to put landscaping around it, I think it's going to be just fine. And I just wanted to say, as a personal note, before I say that I vote to approve this, is that I want to thank the city for addressing right off the bat the stormwater management and the runoff, because I think that in this particular neighborhood, runoff seems to be a problem, you know, from lot to lot. So I am voting to approve it. And as it stands, as the city has put forth.
All right.
That's my motion.
So we have a motion on the table to approve it by Commissioner Helfrey. Is there a second?
Do we need that addition, that amendment? I'll second it for you for sure. I mean, I just want to make sure we're consistent in our our approaches with homeowner association. It may just be a moot point.
I'm mumbling.
Could you go back to the screen?
Any other discussion? Commissioner Rubis?
Did the homeowners association say that they would approve it with the soundproofing material on?
If I may, Mr. Newberry, since I talked with one of the three trustees, a condition of the trustees acting favorably on the request was that the surface of the court be sound dampening. The vote was 2-1. And so key amongst those two that voted in favor, according to the third trustee, was the sound dampening. With that, if there is concerns, certainly that does not need to be included in the action tonight of the commission. We do have a set of conditions as part of our recommendation. We would ask those as written and in the report be supported. Thank you.
Commissioner Helfrey.
Okay, so Mr. Munich, I have a question on the motion that I made. So in your motion, can you say approve it as it is, but that we would request that they I guess I just don't understand how we can tell them that they have to do a sound dampening thing. I don't understand that. That's where I'm lacking something.
Well, to be as frank as possible, it's probably an omission that the department made. The key complaint we hear about game courts is more than anything, the noise. And so from the standpoint of the department, the contact from the trustee and the discussion about sound dampening material was probably something we should have included as part of our conditions, and you'll probably see in the future, just because noise is the consistent complaint we hear regarding these types of facilities.
Okay, so since nobody seconded the motion, right? Nobody has seconded anything?
I did.
Oh, did you? Okay, so then in order, it has to change then to say, including the sound dampening. Is that-
Again, if based upon your comment, Ms. Helfrey, if you're confident that it is a requirement under the indentures, then again, the department would just recommend and ask that you approve the report as written.
So I know that it's not in the bylaws anywhere, but if the two of the three trustees have said that that's what they want, then that's what they want. So I should amend my motion to state that it should be as the report is written to include the sound dampening.
You certainly could. We add all kinds of conditions, as you know, regardless if it's solar energy systems or outdoor game courts. We're asking for more netting than what was shown by the property, or we're asking for more landscaping. We're asking for certain things relative to stormwater. So again, the intent of the department is to minimize impacts, but to allow let's say, the best utilization of the property where we do accommodate outdoor game courts.
Okay, so then I guess I need to amend it so that it says what the city recommended in addition to the sound dampening. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, if
Okay,
that's
that's what
something
I
you'd
wanna
like to
do.
do.
Sorry, apologize.
All right. Are you okay with? All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes. Mhm.
You could
Vote. All right.
Sorry.
Yeah. Mhm. All right. Any discussion on the amendment? All right. All those in, Commissioner Cohn?
How do we ensure that the commissioner's ball's noise doesn't disturb any of the neighbors? Is it just a sound barrier? How do we regulate that?
Well, Mr. Cohn, I believe all we're doing is ensuring that the surface where the ball will be bounced is not necessarily just concrete or asphalt. It will not eliminate the sound, but the intent is to reduce it. And certainly any outdoor play with a ball, puck, whatever the projectile might be, does create noise. And I guess it's just part of having children play in a neighborhood.
Exactly.
All right, thank you. That explains it. Thank you very much.
All right. All right. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Chair, do we have a vote on the amendment?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Right. Sorry. Yeah. All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, the amendment passes. All right. Now, roll call vote on the motion.
Commissioner Rubis. Commissioner Cohn.
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn votes yes. Commissioner Depler.
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey.
Yes.
Chair Beatty.
Yes.
And thank you.
All right, motion passes. Thank you. All right. Next we have the site development plan for Melrose Heights.
The recommendation report on a preliminary plat for the proposed Melrose Heights subdivision, which has been submitted by St. Albans Property LLC, NU Non-Urban Residence District, street address 19936 Melrose Road, St. Louis County, locator number 24Z340053, which supports the approval of a 6-lot residential subdivision on a 55.68 acre tract of land, with each of these planned lots being over 4+ acres in area, Ward 1.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vinich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, one of your responsibility and roles is to review plats that do not require a overlay district of any type. In this particular instance, the property owner, St. Albans Properties LLC, is requesting the favorable action of the Planning and Zoning Commission on a proposed 6-lot subdivision that would be upon a property that is almost 56 acres in size. Obviously, the number of lots is well less than what the underlying zoning district designation would allow. And again, that underlying zoning district designation is the NU non-urban resident district. The department has reviewed the proposed preliminary plat and all supporting information and finds it to meet, excuse me, all of the requirements of the zoning ordinance, subdivision and development regulations, the tree preservation and restoration code, and the grading code. The only condition that has been added relative to the recommendation is that more of the site be protected by the natural resource protection standards. The analysis completed by a soil scientist indicated approximately half the site could be disturbed while the other half could be protected. In equating that to an on-lot basis, about 4.5 acres of some of the lots could be disturbed for one single-family dwelling and any authorized accessory uses or structures. In this particular instance, one of the lots is just over 4+ acres, while others are in that 10 to 11 range. The department believes that an increase in approximately 12 acres would be appropriate in terms of protected area and still allow full utilization of the 6 lots. Therefore, tonight you have a favorable recommendation with the caveat or condition that the amount of protected area be increased as described in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Commissioner Helfrey?
Mr. Vunich, this drawing that's up here right now, you're stating that on each, you would want to increase a natural resource protection area on each one of these lots?
Collectively, the department is recommending that additional area be added over the entirety of the project. How the developer and the soil scientists were to determine that, I would leave that up to them. Obviously, there's going to be the roadway areas, the 2 of them, and then the home sites. But from the perspective of the department, having almost 4+ acres to develop a single home site on a lot is excessive. And again, our codes all speak to the simple fact it's the minimum amount necessary to allow the permitted use to be authorized. Seeing I didn't answer your question.
Well, you kind of did. Me and natural resource protection lines are no strangers. And so I guess, so they're not delineated right now is essentially what you're saying. They would be as it goes forth, but that the lots are delineated. Is that what I'm understanding?
If Mr. Newberry could go to the colorized plan, if he has it. There is a plan sheet while Mr. Newberry finds it that does show the natural resource protection standards analysis. And as part of that, there are 2 areas that have been kind of generally, I believe that's it.
It says stand 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that the one?
So here is the resource protection analysis. And there is at least on the sheet that's been provided as part of the packet, there is a dashed blue line that is indicated around the street and then the home sites. And you can see it is just a general representation. And from the perspective of the department, it felt like this isn't the resource protection, I believe, Mr. Newberry.
I guess the gist of it is the lots are designed, as it stands right now, lots are drawn out. They are what they are. And that the natural resource protection line will be determined at a later date. You're just asking for more than what is in the packet.
That's correct.
So when we make the approval or not approval of it, it would be to make the approval of the recommendation with the addition of the initial additional natural resource protection.
Yes, the recommendation is to approve the preliminary plat as submitted with up to 36 acres of the site protected under the resource requirements. Right
Okay.
now, the protection area is less than that, as mentioned.
Right. So do you not mean more than 36 or?
It's in the report, it's up to, it's 36 acres.
Oh,
Okay. Well, I'll make that recommendation. Is that the drawing?
You could zoom in a little bit. Actually, I need to see around one of those. Well, again, in the packet of information, there is a sheet that has dash blue lines that indicate the area of disturbance. And again, this sheet does not show it.
I don't see it.
So you made the recommendation?
Yes.
And does that encompass what you want, the additional that Ms. Helfrey has agreed to?
Yes.
Okay, so you could make the motion, Ms. Helfrey.
I did. I made the motion.
Okay. I'll second.
Right. Any further discussion on the motion? Commissioner Rubis? Oh, okay.
And again, just to emphasize, take into account that there's 6 lots. There'll be 6 homes on the as part of the development. If we were to do as recommended by the soil scientists and as submitted by the developer, 4.5 acres of the site could be cleared for 1 home and accessory uses or structures. This is a site that has significant topographic relief associated with it. It's a site that has mature woodlands. The intent of the ordinance, again, is always to do the least amount possible to allow the permitted use to be authorized. I did not see the analysis as presented by the petitioner doing that. And so from the perspective of the department, it's recommending that additional land area be protected.
All right, seeing no other discussion, roll call vote.
Commissioner Cohn,
You're muted. Oh.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
Commissioner Doppler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubis, Chair Beatty.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Now, the last item, the $50 fee, Mr. Newberry.
Correspondence prepared by the Department of Administration and Department of Planning explaining the planned assessment of a $50 fee for any zoning authorization for building permits issued by the city of Wildwood. This fee is new, recommended by the city council, and has not been collected by the city of Wildwood in the past, all wards.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Mr. Chair, I would ask Mr. Young to come on screen and unmute.
All right. Mr. Young.
Thank you, Mr. Young. I appreciate it because I do have a question for you that I think you need to respond to. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, over the course of the past several years, there has been a committee representing the heads or the chairs of the 3 standing committees of City Council: Economic Development, Planning and Parks, and Administration and Public Works. Their charge from the full City Council and Mayor was to investigate our fees and see if those fees needed to be increased to represent the true cost that's being incurred by the city to administer those services and activities. Some of the fees, as we discovered, had not been raised since 1995. And as you know, over the course of almost 28 plus years, inflation has challenged many communities, businesses, and individuals. And so the review was essential. One of the items that was discussed is the process that the city utilizes to review permits that will be ultimately authorized, so to speak, from a building code perspective by St. Louis County. We call it the zoning authorization process. Any permit application submitted, the city reviews it against zoning, subdivision, grading, tree preservation, lighting, noise, etc. St. Louis County does the building code, plumbing code, electrical code, structural code, et cetera, et cetera. The city has never charged a fee for that service. And as we've moved forward in understanding the stormwater management components, the lighting components, more and more of staff time internal to the city is spent reviewing them. The city council received the fee increase and from that perspective supported it. The department is providing it to you tonight as an informational item. And I do want to emphasize through Mr. Young, it is a fee, not a tax, correct, sir?
That is absolutely correct.
And so again, if it were a tax, it would have to go to the voters for approval. This is a fee for a defined service offered by the city and a fee that's collected by most other municipalities. And again, Wildwood has not collected it. If there are any questions, Mr. Young, Mr. Brown, Mr. Lee, Mr. Newberry, and I are available because we have all had a hand in it.
Motion to approve as presented.
Wait, are you looking for a motion? This is just information,
I
right?
thought this was on the.
It's just an informational item because I don't want necessarily to have a fee imposed relative to the land use processes of the city, and the Planning and Zoning Commission be the last to know.
Okay, so why would this not be on the public comment or the public hearing? That's why I'm confused here. Is the act.
The comment was made during public participation, and any item on the agenda or any item not on the agenda can be discussed at that time. But again, just an informational item, and if there's any other questions, we'd be glad to address them.
Commissioner Depler?
Just a quick question. I was just curious, is it in line with most other municipalities' fee structure? Just curious.
Yes, based upon conversations with some of our employees that have worked at other municipalities, this is still relatively low. And again, the intent was not to try to cover the cost or to increase revenue. It was really just to begin that process of offsetting what we know is a lot of time, energy, and resources that go into it.
Thank you.
But thank you for the question.
So, yes. All right, in that case, motion to adjourn? Or any,
Motion to adjourn.
seconded by Commissioner Depler. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks to Mr. Young, Mr. Lee. We appreciate your attendance.